This is the Crowd Crux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Brigman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Brigman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at FULFILLRITE.com. What up? Salvador Brigman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. If it is your first time tuning in, again, my name is Sal, but also I love crowdfunding. I love talking about how to raise money on platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And sort of more importantly, I would say, how do you get people to take action? How do you get people to actually support your project? How do you get awareness and spread the word and stand out from the crowd? Nowadays, even if you have a great product, you have to know how to market it. You have to know how to get attention to it. And we cover all of that on this podcast. I think one of the worst things that can happen when you're gearing up to the launch of a new Kickstarter or a new Indiegogo campaign is honestly to launch it and then have crickets, have nothing happening, have no one backing it, have no one talking about it. It's super frustrating and scary and disheartening, and I sort of want to save you from that headache. And if you are in the middle of your campaign right now and you're listening and you're wondering, I don't know how we're going to hit that fundraising goal, or this really isn't what I was hoping for when I thought I would launch a campaign. You look at these media success stories that are raising 6 and 7 figures on Kickstarter. For some reason, my campaign didn't do that. So if you're wondering these things, you are certainly in the right place. And today's episode is a little bit unique, I think, in that the entrepreneur that I brought on the podcast has a very long history of launching Kickstarter campaigns. So his team has launched 30 campaigns on Kickstarter, the majority of which were successful, and he's been there since the beginning. I believe it's been like 7 years that he's been doing crowdfunding related work. So it's really not only inspirational, but he's boiled this launch process down to a science. I mean, they're launching 4 new projects every single year, and they're getting funding. They're surpassing their goal. I believe their last campaign did over $300,000. So it's crazy to me that not only can you build a business launching these campaigns, not only can you consistently build up your brand by launching these campaigns, but there is also a science behind it. It is not only art. So you're going to hear from him in just a second. If you haven't already, go and check out my new Audible book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. It has everything in that book. If you're tired of listening to all of my different podcasts, trying to paste together the knowledge, I bring you all of that in one concise audiobook. This is something you can listen to while you're driving to work, while you're commuting via subway, while you're doing laundry. You can be doing other things while you're learning about crowdfunding in Kickstarter. And that's a really good place to start, particularly if you do like the podcast format. If you are looking to get a little bit deeper even and also improve your results, I do have all of this in a significant portion, I would say, in an online course. And I also have some free training videos for you guys, particularly on the topics of getting backers and also getting the media to write about you, getting influencers to write about you and talk about you. You'll also hear in this episode how one influencer actually contributed to thousands of dollars of pledges to this individual's Kickstarter campaign. So if you want to check that out, you can go to crowdcrux.com/PR. That is CROWD crux.com/PR. I'll also include a link in the show notes. And when you enter your email address, I will start sending you training videos. I will start sending you videos to get you quickly up to speed on some of these strategies and tactics. Without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. Michael, welcome to the podcast. I honestly feel privileged to have someone on this show who is literally a Kickstarter veteran. Like, how many projects have you launched already?
I stopped counting. It's over 2 dozen, and I think less than 3 dozen. So yeah.
I was looking on the project, your profile page. It looks like you've created 30 campaigns.
Okay, if that's what that's so, a couple of those were canceled. Like I forgot to put a video on one and launched it, and I was like, oh, cancel, and then redid the whole thing and started it over that same day. And there was one that was on a different account when we were thinking of putting it on like the company name as opposed to my name. So yeah, it's in that range.
Still, dude, that is super impressive, man. And I'm sure also, learning from the failures and such, and you just get so excited when you're launching a campaign. Sometimes you might forget to put the video on or forget to do all of these different things. How much would you say, just like ballpark figures, nothing specific here, would have you raised in aggregate on Kickstarter?
Well, people can add it up. So it's like, so even though I tried to hide something, I wouldn't be hiding anything. I think it's, so we have a project that's finishing today, Crusaders, that just went over 300,000. That's our second campaign to do that, fourth over $250,000. I think across everything we've done, I again stopped counting, 3.5, approaching 4, something like that.
Wow, that's insane. Where did this actually start then? Like, I know that Kickstarter for a lot of the people in the audience is something that's a bit newer to them. They're just learning about it. For you, when did this journey actually start?
So it started specifically with Kickstarter. It started 7 years ago. We did Eminent Domain, which was the first big money-making blockbuster board game project that was on Kickstarter. There were a handful before, and the one that had made the most before that was about $14,000. And Eminent Domain, we asked for 20 and we got 43 or 48. And bear in mind, this is back in the day, 7 years ago, when that was astronomical. And yeah, Eminent Domain, I think, was the highest funded project on Kickstarter for board games for a year and a half or something like that. So the reason we ended up using Kickstarter is I started publishing games and used my own money, right? And Eminent Domain was a game that my friend designed, and it was amazing. And I said, this is really good. But I told my wife no more money from us personally. I was working as a financial advisor. I'd already put in a decent amount, about $40,000 at that time, I think.
I'm sure she liked hearing that too.
Yeah. So I was like, where am I going to get the money?
Yeah.
So it was either wait 6 to 9 months to be able to afford to make Eminent Domain, or hey, we'll try out this Kickstarter thing. And I was so scared, right? Because the result on the project would say something to me existentially about doing board game publishing. Oh, what if I put it up there and we fail? Bear in mind, I was asking for 20,000. The previously highest funded one was a little over 14,000. I was asking for more than the one that had funded the most, but it wasn't like today where if you did that, you'd be asking for $13 million or whatever. So, no one's going to expect that to fund. And it worked out. Yeah. So
that sort of also, I guess, launched the actual publishing game company, because it looks like that was founded around 2009.
Yeah, we founded it around 2009. We had already put out 4 games by the time we had no, 5 games by the time we had launched the Kickstarter project.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's
What
yeah.
is this?
I said
That's
yeah.
incredible. And also just to go back in time, thinking that, say, $20,000, $14,000, like these are large sums on Kickstarter at that time. Now that's like nothing. Now we have $1 million projects, et cetera. It's nothing like that back then. Very humble beginnings. And I think sort of your story is very in line with what crowdfunding caters to. Very in line with bringing new projects into the world and finding a way to connect with these people that are enthusiastic about these types of games. I sort of want to get a picture of then from that time, 7 years ago, how has the company grown since that initial launch?
Well, back then it was me and my friend Seth who designed Eminent Domain, and that was it. I was working part-time very enthusiastically on all business aspects. Seth was working part-time enthusiastically on game product type aspects. And today, Seth still works part-time because he has a really good engineering job. But I am full-time, and there are 11 people total that work for TMG. And Seth is really like full-time for us and part-time for the engineers, I should restate. But yeah, there's 9 other people besides the 2 of us.
Congrats.
And that's because we have the work. And today, in 2014, 15, and 16, we had $1.2 million, $1.4 million, $1.2 million in revenue. This year, we're already over that $1.2 million in revenue thus far, and quite possibly end up around 2 by the end, but we'll see how that goes.
Congratulations. I imagine, loving to create games, loving to create tabletops, etc. That's sort of like your playtime, in that you now have all of these people working for you to actually work on your new passion project, or to work on bringing these new products into the world. Is that like sort of like your sandbox, like what you were aiming for the entire time?
Somewhat. It's more like I think it's more like Seth's sandbox. I love games. Don't get me wrong. I'm very into games, but I am more into business and operating a business. So that's what I really like, and thinking about how to create and improve upon the business, much less than the games themselves necessarily. But that's like, top 1 not non-family interest and top 2 non-family interest in my life. So
would you say that you are the marketing smarts also behind these projects, or you're more of the logistics and planning behind them?
All of it.
You're wearing all those hats. Yeah.
I'm the everything behind all of it. And it was only 2014 before I hired the first person that wasn't me or Seth. Yeah.
Cool. There's so much I want to get into with this interview. And there's a lot of different topics that we can cover. I think that for many of the people in the audience who are more creative types also, a lot of your business brains and marketing knowledge are going to help them, because they sort of struggle with the problem of, hey, I've created this really cool game, but now I don't know how to get the word out. I don't know, the best way to fulfill it. Like all of these different things, actually making it into something that people can buy and experience. That's the big pain point. So I first want to ask you, you've had a very unique perspective here of being with Kickstarter since the beginning. So I want to get your idea of what has worked for you in terms of getting backers, getting the word out, all this kind of stuff, and has that changed over time? Is Kickstarter still, in a sense, very easy to just blow up on? Like, how have things changed over the trajectory of your career here?
I would say so. A little bit of a preface about me. While I do have a good business and or marketing mind, it's driven towards long-term results and not short-term results. I'm really, really bad at being like, just convincing someone, hey, you should buy this right now. Partially because I feel that the the transaction, like no, that's your choice. Really, I'm okay with that. You say, oh, I'd really like this, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, cool. If you have a reason why, we can try to incorporate that, or add that to our thinking for the future to improve. But I'm not going to like hard sell somebody. So blowing up, yes, is possible. I would say it's difficult. You kind of have it's the most important thing I have found is to have an audience first. And at this point in time, I've had an audience first for so long that in a lot of ways, we can be or are negligent in other ways to bring about more funding, right? Or quote unquote blowing up. So yeah, audience first, deliver good stuff, go back and rinse and repeat. That works for a creative type endeavor where you can create and then create again and then create again, or be the business person that supports those creators. That's kind of what I do as a game publisher.
I think that
go ahead.
I would say, I think, so when we throw out the term audience, that can mean like a lot of different things. So when you say audience, do you mean people who are following you on Kickstarter, people who are subscribed to your email list? Where would you say is the core traffic here? Is it people on Facebook? Like, where is this audience taking action from?
Sure. For us, it's been email has been really important. We've got 28,000 people on our email list now. It's also previous customers. If you take their email list plus all the all the email addresses we have from selling on Kickstarter for so long, we've got 56,000 people on that list or something like that. So we use that information to serve Facebook ads at this time. And we have a podcast that we started a couple of months ago that's going pretty well. It's been, when I say audience, I mean people who you have some level of relationship with. Maybe it's not back and forth because, granted, even the 11 people in total that work at TMG could not have ongoing relationships with depth with 28,000 people, right? It's not happening. But they want to know what's going on. We tell them. We treat them like people. If they contact us, we respond. And that's what I mean by audience. I don't mean, hey, I've got 3,000 followers on Twitter and therefore I'm good. Because if you have that and you think that is going to bring anybody supporting your project at the beginning, you're quite possibly wrong. I mean anybody. It might be zero, but I would be surprised if it was more than 50. And so if you need 1,000 people to jump in on a project, then yeah, that's not going to cut it. So start going deeper with those people, get them in a place where they're going to look and you can contact them. If you can get a ability to like send them Facebook messages or text messages, the email is good as well. And there was something in what I just said that was kind of hidden. There's a subtle thing. If you know you need 1,000 people. So that's an interesting statement. You should know exactly how many people you need, which means you have to go pretty far down the rabbit hole of understanding production cost, prototyping costs, shipping costs, everything.
Looking here too at some of your projects, not every single one follows the same growth path. So some of them I see had a really big initial spike at the beginning. And from what I've heard, sort of the formula to make that happen is to build the audience first, make sure you get people's email addresses or Facebook or text message, etc. But you also have these other campaigns that continue to see growth over time. Have you noticed anything different between these campaigns that continue to grow throughout the duration versus the ones just kind of spike and then like go into the slump of death with Kickstarter, like lacking momentum?
Sure. So interesting that the current project that we have on right now, Crusaders, it had the biggest spike on the first day that we've ever had, and it goes through the slump, but the slump was still mostly $5,000 to $8,000 a day for 15 days or something like that, right? So a meaningful amount of money. If I look at yes, I see differences. I look at any project as having three different parts. Okay, there's the beginning. That's like day 1, day 2, really. Maybe even day 3, but usually it's day 1, day 2. That is where you have your audience, and hopefully you can get them excited before you launch. That's something that we've not been great at for the most part. The next project that we do will be better than the one after that. It's a thing we're concentrating on. One of the reasons we had the podcast. But so that's reflective of your initial audience and their initial excitement and getting them on board. Then there's the middle part, which is everything but like the last 2 days, maybe 3 days. And that is going to be a relatively steady pace, where that steady pace could be 0 or it could be a lot, right? And to me, that middle part is reflective of the results on the first part. So it's like those first 2 days will help to determine the low or high level buzz throughout the campaign that can be maintained to get the trough. You know, how full is that trough? How much money's coming in?
Yeah.
Or backers. And then the end. And the end will be reflective of those first two and how many people in your audience were sitting on the fence, or it was like, oh, well, maybe not right now, we'll do it later, sort of thing. Each part is important, and that trough is very tricky. In a lot of ways, you kind of don't know, or it's hard to predict, you know, what is going to do really well throughout that and what's going to do worse. There are some, if you can get a really influential person to say something about your project, like they have to be extremely influential. For our project Dungeon Roll, at like 8 days until it ended or something like that, we had Jerry Holkins from Penny Arcade say, oh, I backed this, you should check it out, like in his blog post, right? That was it. I backed this, you should check it out, and it was linked. And we got like 500 new backers within a day.
Wow.
Because Penny Arcade has a gigantic audience, ridiculously huge.
Oh, in terms of like the amount of funding that contributed, how much would you say ballpark that was?
If it was 500 backers, then that would have been $75,000.
Jeez, $75,000
sorry, 7,500.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was gonna say that's insane.
That's off by an order of magnitude, 7,500.
But still, that's a lot just for a mention there.
That led into Reddit, and that was in the trough, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you now, that is not something that anybody can ever count on. That just like, you know, I just decided to do this sort of thing from him. Yeah, if you can get some things in the trough that provide spikes, then you will find little benefits of raising that level, because if that is a 2-week period, it's each in the case of a Kickstarter project and what happens from point beginning to point end, it's really kind of like a fractal. And so inside of that middle part, there's these micro hey, here's a beginning, here's another trough, and here's an end. So if you can get a spike like that, it's like a new, smaller beginning, and then it trails off a little
Ooh,
bit.
that's a cool way to think about it. Yeah.
And so that's at least been what I've observed.
Hmm.
So one of the main ways that we help do that, which is in our control, is that we heavily utilize Facebook for awareness, right? Because we're targeting our own customers and people are on our email list, we will run 10 days of, we want to show people who are going to be emailing that this project exists once a day. We want them to see it when they're on Facebook, right?
Hmm. Doing the retargeting, yeah.
Yeah, so I retarget, I do daily unique reach, and I'm willing to pay by impressions a ridiculously large amount, like $17. That's not ever what I end up being charged. It's more like 12.
Hmm.
But when I put 17, it means that for the most part, as long as one of my people are on Facebook, they're going to see my ad
Hmm.
if they're on that day. And so when I do that and I establish, because we emailed before and now we've got like 10 days of ads and we're in the middle of the project, and I email again, hey, this is what's going on, we get another decent spike in the middle there.
Wow, that's just a ton of information to dissect and just absorb there, in terms of these different elements that you've sort of broken down with the fundraising process, and also like these mini fractals that happen when you get a mention, or you get sort of a flurry of pledges there. That's a really cool way to think about it. I did want to ask you, so it seems like you've, in this journey, also had some really cool memories. And you've had these events that have happened to you. Do you have any other you'd like to share with the audience? Maybe a day where you were just like ecstatic because something happened that you just didn't expect, or maybe just a turning point in the company as it's been growing. Would love any kind of memories you had to share throughout this. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
Yeah. I mean, so not surprisingly, maybe no. But I do have one memory that kind of says why I don't really have that. To be able to manage to do what I do, that is run the board game publishing company, have people who cycle through hating you and loving you and all these things, and there's the internet, so you can read and get all of this information, right? I have learned that everything has to be kind of middle of the road. If something is really, really amazing and awesome happens, I don't get super duper excited. Yeah, I'll be excited. But if bad stuff happens, I don't, start throwing staplers around the room and keyboards and whatnot. So a very interesting memory that I have really correlates to that. I had this was after Dungeon Roll. This was in 2014, and we raised $250,000. We had like 12,000 backers or something like that. This was a huge project for us, big watershed type of moment. And I happened to be driving with a friend of mine because we were going to a board game trade show in Las Vegas. And we got there. This had just finished funding, and we were going to eat. And he said, I'm surprised. Why are you not like just ridiculously off the wall? Like that was amazing. And I said, well, because if I did that, then I have to be super down when people say I'm a jerk. which I kind of am in a lot of ways. So that happens frequently. And so, yeah, I think, yeah.
That's a very interesting way to think about it. But ironically, I think, a team is made up of different members, and your role, it seems, is to be very level-headed, to use sort of the logic side of your brain very heavily, make sure that if people are angry, that you're sort of separating what they're saying from, is this objective kind of a thing. So you play a very important role in the team. Maybe like other teammates are super ecstatic, but you have to be the sort of one to make sure you're on an even keel and thinking realistically about your future here.
Yeah, I can see that.
I also had one other question sort of in that vein. In terms of the realities of building a tabletop, a board game, card game type of company, what have you learned from that you could pass on in terms of the realities of actually making decent money? I mean, $1 million a year doing this type of company.
Whoa. That's top line revenue. And I got to pay people and pay for shipping and pay for products. So, yeah.
Well, exactly. That's what I would love to hear. It's important to put that in perspective.
A small fraction of that. So, yeah, I make a small fraction of that. I get paid a salary. The game I've been reinvesting in the ability to make more and do better. And so we've never actually posted a profit we have, but just not in a long time. This year, I think we should be posting a profit on TMG, but so that's one thing on the perspective. Sorry, I super interrupted you because, yeah, that's an important thing to make sure it doesn't go very far. One of the most important things that I learned is that, and thankfully this is the way that I am, there is a lot of benefit to being open and honest, and people call it, be transparent or be authentic, like this is a business strategy. And to me, you have to be doing things that you feel okay about. Because as soon as you're not doing things that you don't feel okay about, then there are aspects that you cannot be open and honest about. And therefore you won't be transparent or authentic, right? And so this is important because you will screw things up. Maybe you won't. I do, and I do it on a regular basis. To give you an example, before having employees, I had not ever worked in a environment that was threatening towards a loss of job, loss of work. Okay. Mm-hmm. Pretty secure employment throughout. And I thought was funny. And Daniel Hadlock, who's now the president of TMG, is the first person I hired, other than being me and Seth, who founded the company. I would joke with him, and he felt it was funny, so it's okay, about utilizing the words from The Princess Bride and saying, "Well, good job, Daniel. Most likely fire you in the morning." Right?
Oh my God, that's so bad.
Yeah, see, you apparently worked in one of these environments. And then when we got some more employees, and they would hear this, they're like, "That's not funny." I was like, "What do you mean it's not funny?" And then I realized later that it's not funny because they worked in environments that were basically like that, and they saw everyone get fired around them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, by the way, that's, as it turns out, that can be funny, but it's certainly not funny to somebody who is working in an environment like that and is sensitive to, that happening.
True. And it's also true, though, as an entrepreneur, like you could have and be building a company, be putting out products, and you could find out that while you might be making money, you can't continue the business. So it's kind of like for us also a reality, like, well, made all of this great stuff, but maybe the business goes under. And that's just kind of how it works sometimes. So I think employees are a bit more looking for that security, and that can be very scary and fearful for them also.
Right. And one of the things about being honest and open is that the people here at TMG understand, they have an understanding of, how we stand financially. It's not perfect understanding, and that's something that I would like to improve and have wanted to improve for several years, but it's like, that's just one of those fires that I'm like, yeah, that can keep burning. Things are okay. Other things are more important.
So it sounds like this transparency goes not only with your Kickstarter backers, making sure that they're kept in the loop with fulfillment and everything, but also with your team and with your employees and the people who have really dedicated their life and their time to these projects.
Yeah, it's everything, for sure. In the case with them, if anybody asks me, like, oh, how much cash do we have? I go, oh, we have this much.
Yeah,
right.
Very transparent.
And at this moment, I'm we're waiting right now. We have a project ending today, which means in like 17 days we're going to have $270,000 or $300,000 show up, and so yeah. You can be like, hey, Mr. Vendor, by the way, obviously you see this, I'm going to pay you a bunch of that, and like stretch things a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I think that also is a testament to your values in that you're being transparent and you're only putting out products you feel good about. And that's just kind of creating a very healthy kind of employment environment. But at the same time, I would push you here and I ask, so if you've launched 30 projects over the last 7 years, that's what, maybe like 4 projects a year? That's a pretty aggressive timeline. Does it work out to be about that?
Yeah, I think so.
How then do you maintain that level of pace and also this quality? Is it pretty much like you have all these ideas you've laid out for the year, and then one after one, after this project, we're working on the next one? Is it just very like conveyor belt like that?
Oh, that's a lot more. Maybe this becomes a 2-part episode. So with that, we don't. So we have adjusted our thinking over time, and we have not ever until just recently, just barely recently, decided, and a couple of occasions back in the day here and there, okay, here's the thing, we want to do it, we want to deliver it at this date and map it out, and we want this done here and here and here, traditional project management type of stuff. We have always allowed games to flow through at their proper pace because it is hard to know how quickly a game will be ready. And what I mean by that is we often sign game designs that excite us. There are 3 people in the company. One of them's me, and I do a lot of other things, so I don't spend a lot of time doing game development, but I could if I wanted to. Another one is Andy, and another one is Seth. And so we will sign games that excite us and are good, but we feel need work to become great. And we will sign games that are good and high quality, but would be relatively easy for us to do. And that could be an import that just happens to be very good and has finished artwork because it's from another publisher who made it in German. Or it could be something that's ready to go and we just need to assign some artists and kind of, check up with them on a regular basis. And so we spent the first forever of TMG letting product flow through. And a couple of years ago, we actually mapped that, put like a visual map of, so we know all the games that are going through and where they're at in the process. And just in the past couple of months, yeah, you have a question?
Oh, no, you can keep going there.
Okay. In the last couple of months, we have changed things so we have priorities. We now have ranked these games because we discovered that we looked at our sales for the last 12 months and our deluxified projects just like totally outperform everything else when we put in extraordinary effort. And so we identify those. We'll try to get those moving a lot faster, right? Bring more of those in. And then we have games that we are really excited about, but they can't meet the deluxified mark, which brings a lot of extra components, a lot of extra cost, a lot of really good things for our customers. But there's games that we're excited about, and we don't see the path to making all of the upgrades, like the bling, the shiny fancy bits. Mm-hmm. And so those projects we want to release at a big convention. So we have now this hybrid of where we have lots of things flowing through on a regular basis. And so that's why we can keep up to that high pace. And there's the handful of ones that we really, really are super duper extra excited about, right? Which are starting to get more of that semi-traditional project management. We have a different way of looking at that than, just like here's the date to meet this part and the date to meet this part. But yeah.
Okay. That we're coming to the end of the interview here. Just a tremendous amount of very useful information. Super interesting for me, man, too. We got to do another follow-up podcast to this one. I just had two really quick questions for you here before we wrap it up. The first being, it seems like you have this model down where you're not only producing the games, you're also looking for these different assets. Maybe you're working with people who initially create the game. You're sort of fleshing it out. And then getting funding on Kickstarter. Have you done any games you haven't gotten funding on Kickstarter after you've sort of learned how to do the crowdfunding thing?
Oh yes. The majority of the product that we create does not get funded on Kickstarter. We are set up and should be able to make like 20 to 30 new games in any given year, or expansions. And so 3 of those might be funded on Kickstarter.
And then they're all being sold on your website?
Oh, we sell through distributors all over the world who sell to hobby game stores, and we actually don't sell on our website.
Got it. And the last question I had for you is, since you've seen so much of crowdfunding and Kickstarter, do you have any companies or references that stand out in your mind in terms of things that people should check out, be it a marketing company, being it resources or tools, something that people can just go and check out after this interview?
Oh, as far as things like MailChimp?
Yeah, or even...
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
MailChimp, Facebook, ads, and yeah, those are the main tools that we use. If you're making games, Board Game Geek, but you should probably already know that.
Very simple setup. Yeah.
It's it's about the relationship with the people, and that doesn't mean you need a whole bunch of tools or fancy Instagram. I hear that that works out pretty well.
And you haven't used any like companies to help market your product or PR agencies or anything like that?
I did that one time, and I was very disappointed with the service that I got. And I asked for certain things to happen, and then the CEO over there gets in a fight with me. Not like a physical fight where you throw fists and things like that,
staplers,
or staplers. But yeah, that guy was super unpleasant. And then I had to go to I went to the chairman, who happened to be an attorney. I was like, you got to get this guy under control. I'm saying I'm willing to pay you for the work that's been done, and I want you guys to stop. And this guy's like, I am making your company amazing. and your business is so much better. And I was like, clearly, you, who are an attorney, realize that the communications that your guy is sending me are not appropriate, and
Outlandish.
you can look at what has happened, and you can see that you guys are not making my company. This is the 27th project that we've run, right? And they were running spammy ads and things, clickbait, link baity, clickbait crap. I was like, oh, okay. I thought you guys were gonna do so. You said you had some targeting magic, and it didn't work out. So I just cut that limb off real quick.
So it looks like going forward, you started the podcast. I definitely want to get the name of that so people can check it out that are listening now. What's the name of the podcast? Is it in iTunes or on your site?
It's a Tasty Minstrel Games podcast, or the TMG podcast, and it is iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, those things.
So it looks like you're sort of expanding now in a bit of content marketing, getting more into PR, that kind of stuff. Definitely the podcast, man, I've seen has just grown phenomenally over the last few years, and it's literally now one of the number one ways that people find me. So I think that's going to be really good for your brand, just seeing that take off so much as an industry as a whole.
Yeah, I'm super all in on that.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has just been just a wealth of information. Also, just your story is fascinating to me. Again, like I said, we have to do some kind of a follow-up interview. We'd love to see what kind of questions come out of this. But where can people reach you in terms of your next project or even the current one, whatever you're running? Would love to get a URL people can go to.
The best thing to do is to sign up for our podcast if you're interested in games at all. We talk about industry stuff. It's not meant to be an advertisement for our stuff. When we have something that we want you to know about, we will say it. But that's really good. Email is really good, and that's the best. You can go to playtmg.com, and that's where you should be able to find all that stuff as well.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and look forward to watching some of your future launches.
Cool. Thanks, Salvador.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Brigman. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you did, I always appreciate it when you give me a rating on iTunes. If you take a second to subscribe, you'll get notifications every single time I come out with a new podcast episode. But finally, you heard it right here, guys. Not only do you need an audience if you are looking to launch a campaign, which you should be trying to be building up that email list, but you also need to plan for the mid-campaign slump, or as I like to call it, the Kickstarter slump of death. Because this is the point in time when your campaign is no longer as gaining momentum as it was in the beginning. You're sort of slowing down here. You don't have as much urgency with your marketing. You don't have as many reasons for people to just immediately pledge money. Usually they're going to wait until the very last few days to do that. So the question becomes, how can you plan for this Kickstarter slump period? And I think one of the best ways that you can push through this very difficult time is to make use of PR and to make use of influencer marketing. And this is everything I talk about in my free training videos, which go into not only how can you get into the media, not only how can you get backers and sort of elevate your status in that way, but also how you can break through this detrimental period and surpass your goal on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and keep collecting pledges on a consistent basis. This is something that plagues many different campaigns, even very successful campaigns that even people that I've talked with, creators who have done really well, they surpassed their goal. They always wish that they spent more time thinking about PR and about what to do during that middle period. So if you want to gain access to these training videos, you can go to crowdcrux.com/PR. That is crowdcrux.com/PR. Just enter your email address and I will start sending you some of these free training videos and get you up to speed on all of this. Thanks for listening. Again, my name is Sal, and I'll see you next time.